For out of the abundance of my complaints and grief I have spoken unto now. Then Eli answered and said, Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant you your petition which you have asked of him. And she said, Let your maidservant find favor in your sight. So the woman went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad. And she was able to bear a child, and that child was Samuel. Thus, from 1 Samuel, 1st chapter, verses 16 through 18.
Good morning, Hartsville Pike and community. We do have folks, in addition to the ones in physical presence, listening by way of radio, some watching on internet as well. Glad we can have an opportunity to come and worship today, to be uplifted, to be edified, to be reminded of our purpose here and the great God that we serve. Several things going on this week. It is Labor Day weekend, of course. If you are out of school, many of you will be, and maybe off work tomorrow. I hope it's a great day. Many excited about the trip this afternoon that some will be taken to Chattanooga for the Nicaragua recamp there. We were praying for safe travels for you. It was mentioned in the prayer about the Ferris family. Many of you have heard, some of you maybe not, but Cecil Ferris, Dole's father, passed away yesterday afternoon at home peacefully in his sleep. And so Dole making final arrangements this morning at Woodard Funeral Home there in Westmoreland. We love Dole and family so much. You know, and I appreciate seeing the support and the esteem that you have for Dole. I don't know of another preacher more committed to a local congregation. You can't appreciate all the behind-the-scenes work that he does. I don't know all of it either, but I know he loves you very dearly. I know that we already have and will continue to show our love and support to this family in his passing. Though tentative arrangements, and Stephen will back this up, I think, tomorrow at Woodard Funeral Home, there'll be visitation from 10 in the morning till 6 at night. And then Tuesday from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m., there'll be another visitation. 2 p.m. will be the time of that funeral. And that obviously will cause us to have to reschedule dining with Doyle Tuesday, but be praying for that family. We love them so much. Philip Norwood, I think, is preaching this morning at Nashville Road, will be with us tonight. Invite you back at 5 p.m. We're privileged to support he and Patsy, good work they're doing in North Carolina. It'll be good to hear from them and see them with us tonight. We are 2 weeks away from Family and Friends Day. We have David Lipe scheduled. Some of you have heard him, know of him. If you haven't, you will enjoy a great servant of God with great messages from God. I want you to be part of that. I'm thankful already for preparation, work around the building that's taken place in the last couple of weeks, more between now and 2 weeks from now. But let's be busy inviting, encouraging others. Have an overflow crowd, lots of food. It's going to be a great day, and looking forward to that. Friends and family, or family and friends, we're calling it kind of interchangeably there. So making you aware of that. I'll be using just this mic today. I couldn't find another wireless up there. So if you stole it or borrowed it, get it back to us. I'm not accusing anybody there. Lesson this morning, a little bit unusual. I'm entitling it Face Value. Face value. It is an exploration of what the Bible says about different faces, expressions, and emotions that are kind of the canvas. The emotions are behind the canvas that we show in our faces. Maybe more than you realize is said in the Bible about the value and the importance of what you are portraying to the world. Every one of us, every day of our lives. Through this optical illusion up there to either confuse you or give you a headache or make you think about it the rest of the day, is the face that you see from the front, or is it a profile? I bet most of you, if you look long enough, can kind of see the front angle and the side angle. And I don't know how they do stuff like that. But anyway, I wonder about our faces. Do we realize that again, that adage that we sometimes use, it was written all over their face, is true. Written all over his face. Think of a time in which you, maybe as a parent, you got the young child there with the hand caught in the cookie jar, and you know. Sometimes they don't even have to tell you. You know that they did something that was forbidden or they shouldn't have done. Sometimes a spouse can pick up on some irregularities, and we're betraying ourselves by the way that we say things or that we act. Some of you have come to me and said, Brian, is something wrong? Or are you troubled? And I may not even be aware that I'm stressed or sad or something, but have to stop and think, well, why am I doing that? Or am I truly giving off a vibe of discontent or something like that? The Bible will show that truly it was written all over his or her face as an adage that's true. One of the Queen Elizabeths, I can't remember if it was first or second, said that a good face is the best letter of recommendation. Some of you as employers, or maybe those in charge, at least occasionally, of hiring someone, you know what an importance the first impression is. And often you can pick up just in a moment, even before a word is spoken, is this a trusting face? Is this a person I want representing our business or this company? Often that type of personality can be faked. Might make a good impression and mask really what is going on that's different, but that good face is the best letter of recommendation. I think if you turn it around, you can also say that a bad face is the worst letter of recommendation. Some people may be very well qualified and educated otherwise, are a turnoff because of what they're conveying between the neck and the top of the head there. Our face is very important there. And our faces are intriguing, aren't they? You realize again how interesting it is to meet new people? You often do what I do, and you try to think about, and sometimes I'll poke on you and say, who do they look like? They look very familiar to me, and sometimes I'll say, oh, I know, it looks like Jane, and she'll say, of course not. It looks nothing like Jane. I say, okay, you're right. But it's the idea that we're looking sometimes to make an association. Often we're drawn to a peculiar, I don't mean that in a bad way necessarily, but a feature that is arresting or engaging, and even babies. I think our mic is gone, and I'm having trouble advancing that. Thank you. Even babies pick up on faces. You know that children at a very young age can know what's going on in a parent's life. They know when we're happy. They can measure sadness. They know when we're grieving and angry. And so babies love faces. They are students of that, and I think pick up so much on those characteristics. Bible portrays a lot about these nonverbal cues that we give. Let me talk about the mad face with you. I actually want to share a poem. It's titled, It Shows on Your Face. And before I do that, as you look at the picture, some of you maybe can even see this on the internet. Radio, sorry for you guys, but can you imagine this face staring back at you and saying the words, I love you. I'm proud of you. It's great to be a Christian. And to hear words like that and see the impression and think, there's a disconnect here somewhere. It's not adding up. It shows on your face. You don't have to say how you live each day. You don't have to say if you work or play. A true tried barometer serves in its place. However you live will show up on your face. The hate, the deceit you bear in your heart will not stay inside where it got its start. For the skin is a thin veil of lace for you in your heart you wear on your face. If your life is unselfish, for others you live, not for what you get, but for what you give. If you're close to God in His infinite grace, you don't have to tell. It shows on your face. And as we think about different emotions and where they get their start, I want us to think about what the world is seeing. I hope that Monday morning the world isn't seeing this in us. And what is it that we're mad about? And by the way, I'm not saying that every emotion is wrong or every time that we're angry. I can imagine if we saw Jesus in John 2 and later in the Gospels as He's cleansing the temple, He's overturning the tables of the money changers and the seats of the dove sellers. He might have had an image, kind of a grimace like that. And this was a justifiable anger. Sometimes we're mad, and we have a right to be mad, and God is mad about the things we're mad about. It's just that that's not always the case, and I can't say, well, I'm mad, and it's okay just because I'm mad that way. Let me take you back to Genesis chapter 4. verses 3 through 7. You see, very early in human history, God is going to encounter a young man. Think about Cain and Abel, and how that in the first couple of verses, the Bible says that Cain brought a pleasing sacrifice to God. He brought of the flock there. Cain merely brought one of the offerings from his field there. God's pleased with one, displeased with the other. Well, the Bible says that in verse 5, God did not respect Cain in his offering. Cain was very angry and his countenance fell. I kind of picture that Cain might have looked a little bit like that, minus the pointing finger, but he's not happy at all about God approving of his brother while disapproving of him. And so God asked him a question in verse 6. Why are you angry? Why has your countenance fallen? God is saying, I see something in you. Others could see it. You can't hide it, can you? Not easily when you are mad like that. And so God calls him on it and says, if you do well, verse 7, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door. Its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. Sin is crouching at the door. The devil wants you. You've got no right to be angry. And even with God counseling him, do you know what Cain proceeds to do in the following verses? You're right, kill his brother, Abel. Hebrews 11 is a commentary on that says that by faith Abel offered to God a more sacrifice, literally a more excellent sacrifice. God testified of his gifts that they were righteous. And the Bible says that he, being dead, still speaks. Cain very foolishly killed his brother simply because he offered a preferred sacrifice. That anger was a dangerous signal. God tried to circumvent and shortchange the process, was not succeeding in doing that. Proverbs 25, verse 23 says that the north wind brings forth rain, and a backbiting tongue, an angry countenance. Often if I'm saying the wrong things and in the wrong way, I'm going to elicit some strong emotions. I could cause someone to have a smiling face turn to this real quick. And so I not only am in charge of my face, but I want to make sure that others aren't justifiably angry with me. What is it that you get mad about? Let's look at another face. And I'm calling this a bad face. Good old Cruella de Vil. This is our only cartoon representation there, but she's kind of the poster child of evil. Where in the Bible do you find people with a bad face? Well, in Genesis chapter 31, let me give you time to turn there and kind of set that up. Remember Laban? Laban is reluctant to give his daughter there to Jacob, and he does. Finally, after years of service, he's going to hand over not just them, but others there in the household. But it's going to be a process there. And so in Genesis 31, what Jacob says is, I saw your father's countenance. He doesn't like me. He's looking unfavorably toward me. You know what she didn't say? You got that all wrong. My brother, my father, my family would not do this. They only respect you. They only want what's best for you. She could read it as well. And when he says, it's time for us to get out of here and go back to my home, she didn't argue. There was no trying to get around that. They willingly complied. Sometimes I may not realize that I have a guilty face. That what he's showing outwardly is merely manifesting. Again, it's the canvas of what's going on inwardly there. Let me take you to Isaiah chapter 3, verse 9. It says, the look on their countenance, witnesses against them, and they declare their sin as Sodom. They do not hide it. Woe to their soul, for they have brought evil upon themselves. These bad people in Isaiah's day, it was written all over their face. Their face value was not very valuable. Some people are wicked and they don't pretend to hide it. They're not going to try to put on a mask and convince you that they're righteous. Oh no, it's too fun being bad. And they actually gloat in that. And folks like that are a turnoff, not to everybody, but should be certainly to us. Psalm 10, verse 4, the wicked in his proud countenance does not seek God. God is in none of his thoughts. Pride is one of those words that can be used and is even biblically in a good way. But sometimes that pride is the egotism, the boastfulness, the raised chin that basically defies God and says, there is no God. I am all that I have to answer to. And that's always caused problems. That's never a good setup when my pride causes my face to have a superiority, to have kind of a rebellion against anything that would be religious. Don't we see in our world today how that some, under the guise of anything that smacks of Christianity or often even broader religion in general, they are against that. They will take strong measures and are doing that to make sure that the practice and the freedoms associated even nationally are curtailed. These are dangerous times in which we're going to see more bad faces, I'm afraid. Proverbs 21:29, a wicked man hardens his face, but as for the upright, he establishes his way. Hardens his face. I can think of people, some of them I don't know personally. You see pictures maybe on the news when they've been in trouble or been convicted of murder or burglary, something like that, and the face is just almost expressionless. But if there is an expression, there's an anger. There's just this blank stare of nothing. This idea of life is cheap. Mine is to me, yours is to me. And so often you look at that and you say, I wouldn't put it past them to do anything. I can totally believe. Not just by faces, because sometimes obviously we're wrong, but there seems to be an issue there. In Jeremiah chapter 5, verse 3, before we leave the bad face, O Lord, are not your eyes on the truth? You have stricken them, but they have not grieved. You have consumed them, but they've refused to receive correction. Watch this. They have made their faces harder than rock. They refused to listen. Imagine these people long ago. God is sending prophets like Jeremiah to them and saying, hey, things are not going good. You've got to shore things up. You've got to change. And them manifesting this face that literally looks like a rock. They've got this scowl, this grimace, these eyes that are almost flashing fire, looking at God and saying, how dare you tell me how I ought to live? All the while God is saying, hey, I gave you life. You wouldn't be here except for me. And I've given you the right. I instilled you with free moral agency, but you are hopelessly abusing the right to live in a way that's going to be pleasing in my sight. Let me encourage all of us, don't have a bad face. If I'm not engulfed in sin in the first place, I'm probably going to feel better and radiate kindness and warmth and all those good qualities. But don't be surprised if after a lifetime of sin, it doesn't show up. I've heard this before as we make a transition to the next slide there. The face is like a slow setting concrete. Some of you mixed mortar, you've mixed cement, and you know that when you've got, again, the water and the gravel, whatever it is, this paste that is very pliable. You can twist it any shape you want to, but over time, and usually they give you a pretty good indication whether it's going to be moments, minutes, or hours before it dries. You better do the stirring on the front end, because when it's set, you don't go back and start trying to reshape it like putty or something. It's not clay. My face over time will be an expression of the emotions and the feelings that I have allowed to influence it. And so sometimes you meet a person in their 80s that look very sad or very mad or very bad. Combination of these, often what we think of as negative emotions. It didn't happen overnight. All along the way, especially early on, changes could have been fostered to make that face look different, more pleasant. We'll look at some of those in our last point, but the sad face. Let me actually start with the face that's sad, but for a good reason. in Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 1. Nehemiah is the cupbearer to the king there. And the one day, in exercising his duties, Artaxerxes says something to him. In verse 2, the king said, "Why is your face sad, since you are not sick? This is nothing but sorrow of heart." The emotion, or rather the response for Nehemiah, first of all, is fear. Oh no, he's found me. I can't explain my way out of it. I dare not say, hey, you've misread me. No, he goes on to say, let me tell you why I'm sad. My people are scattered. The city is not rebuilt. I've heard this report about the sad state of affairs, and so prompting that, Nehemiah has permission by the king to go back to his homeland, to survey the situation, to get busy about the rebuilding of the walls. Why? Because the king sees a sad face, inquires what is going on. Nehemiah says, I don't want to stay sad, king. I'm not doing this for pity. There is something that is distressing to me. That sadness led him to do something very constructive, not just for him, but for God's people. This was a means of him, along with Ezra and other reformers, getting Israel back, getting the walls rebuilt, the temple in time restored. All of that started with sadness, didn't it? Sadness. In Job chapter 16, verse 16, you find Job saying this, "My face is flushed from weeping, and on my eyelids is the shadow of death." When I look at the description of Job in the Bible after he had lost all of his children and all of his resources, his livestock, very rich man, in just a moment of time reduced to nothing, and then the painful boils that came upon him almost to the point of death. In fact, him at times saying, "Lord, take me. It would be more merciful for me to be dead than alive now." But he's saying something that is so true. I am beyond sad over my losses. When you have a grieving face, you know what? It's not a matter of saying, you know what, put that off, change it. Just act like nothing is wrong. There are times I need to be sad and to feel sad. It would be wrong for me to pretend otherwise. The danger is sometimes we stay there when plenty of time has passed that we get on with life. But that sadness can be a defining moment. It can foster change that is good. And I'm so thankful as I read Job, I don't see him ending up sad. There is a reversal. And that reversal is definitely possible. He says, let me take you to Job 9, 27 and 28. He said, "If I say I will forget my complaint, I will put off my sad face and wear a smile, I am afraid of all my sufferings. I know that you will not hold me innocent." Job has a key long ago that I need to tap into. It's not always possible or even advisable for me to act different. I know the therapists encourage us to act better than we feel and maybe to fake it till we make it. There's some virtue there. Sometimes the grief is so intense, it's not a matter of just saying, hey, it's all right. That brings us to our glad face. Isn't that a beautiful picture? Would you like to know the story of these young ladies? I don't. I wish I could tell you, hey, these are from Guatemala, Nicaragua. I don't know. I think these girls are smiling not because they got the latest video console system or because they got tickets to some concert. I don't know that they moved into a mansion, and that was the reason someone snapped this picture. It wasn't because they'd been to their favorite restaurant and got a $100 meal. Often our gladness will come not because of outwardly favorable circumstances, but because of a condition of my heart. Some of you are smiling that have seen girls like this, ministered to, talked with them. It's not because grief hasn't taken place. It's not because I have everything the world says is necessary for my happiness. I have conditioned me to be content, as Paul said in Philippians 4, with whatever I have. In whatever state I am, I'm content, glad, thankful for what little or what much I have. Brother Bob did a great job commenting there on 1 Samuel 1. I want to go back there to you because Hannah, when she's before the priest Eli, is sad and he sees it. And she's praying and she's crying, and for years she's barren. She's not able to have children. Well, a promise is given that within a year she would have a child. Sure enough, it happens. And the next time Eli sees Hannah, he sees a revolutionary change from the neck up. She is happy. In fact, she burst into prayer there in chapter 2, exulting in a God who had been so good to her. She leaves her sadness, and then there is gladness at this son, his birth, this one I've asked for, the one. Incidentally, I'm going to turn back over to you, God. He's yours in service to you. She's still glad. Don't you like glad people? And don't you appreciate that for some of them, when you learn their story, you say, how in the world can they smile? They're hurting. They've been through so much. They would have every reason to check out of life and say, that's it, I'm done, no more. But who find the good, who are looking for maybe a reversal. If it never comes, so be it. I'll be glad anyway. Ecclesiastes 8:1 says, who is like a wise man, and who knows the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom makes his face shine, and the sternness of his face is changed. Maybe I need more wisdom so that my face on a routine basis, maybe more than it ever has been, will radiate true love and appreciation of what God has done. A couple of Proverbs before we close. Chapter 15:13. A merry heart makes a cheerful countenance, but by sorrow of the heart the spirit is broken. Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friend. Some of you that have the glad face on most of the time, we all have our moments, find that people will come to you. They want to be in your presence because they know they're going to be uplifted. They know that they're going to have maybe a mood elevation themselves. Why? Because you have something special. And if I think of the people I go to when I'm down, I want to be the person others come to me, to feel better and to be reminded, you know what, God loves us. And no matter what is going on around us or within inside of us, it's all going to be okay. God is going to win, and we're going to come out of this world victorious because we are in God. We have all of His promises. And so, yes, different than the world. I'm going to smile here, and I know that through eternity, I'm going to be smiling like you've never seen. That is going to be the ultimate joy, the true happiness and gladness that God has for His people. I hope today you've been challenged by thinking and measuring yourself by some Bible passages here. Let's let the Acts chapter 8 be our invitation section. Acts chapter 8 has the gospel going to Samaria for the very first time. Persecution kind of caused that in chapter 8, verse 4, for the disciples to be scattered. But they go and they're preaching and they're teaching and they're healing. At Acts 8, I think it's verse 5, says there was great joy in that city. Joy. Why? Because just sick folks are healed or unclean spirits are cast out. That's not the best of it. There's joy because I know that God has sent Jesus in the world and salvation comes through Him. I feel good. Those folks down in chapter 8, verse 11 and 12, we know why they did that. We know what gospel they heard. That gospel about the importance of belief in the Son of God and baptism into His name by the authority of Jesus that causes the joy. You come all the way to the end of that chapter when Philip goes down to this desert place, encounters the Ethiopian eunuch, and after his baptism, the Bible says he went on his way, what? Rejoicing. He's glad. Today you need to know the joy of salvation either initially by your obedience or by coming back and relinquishing, giving up whatever it is that's holding back that joy. For most of you, that's something between you and God. That's done right there in your pew between you and Him, and those things you're going to work on throughout the rest of this week. Others may need to come in a public way and say, I need prayers, need support, need my church family to wrap your arms of love around me. I want to make things right with God in a public way. Song's been selected. Won't you come while together we now stand?